Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CRWS Book Club. Today, we'll be reading out of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code by Neely Fuller Jr. Out of the area 8, which is sex, pages 326 to 340.
Thank you so much. This selection of pages was very, very constructive. I really like that it was discussed the topic of love and how love has often been used incorrectly and to cause lots of confusion, and how love really doesn't exist 2021 on planet Earth. I really like the introduction and the reminder, not the reminder, not the introduction, I mean, but the reminder of the extreme danger that it is to have sex with white people. And I really love that it was stressed how the most vicious thing a white person can do against a non-white person is to have sex with them, so-called rape them. And that happens every single day, which I suspect to be one of the key reasons that we have been able to produce a system of justice. But before I get into the breaking down my notes, would anyone like to share any opening thoughts on what we read?
Yeah, I'll start off. There's a lot of things that I have to say, but my opening thoughts was very constructive section. I just felt like I really needed to read this section. Although I read this section a while back, so reading this again really helped to solidify some of the things I was thinking about, especially on the topic of marriage and also on the topic of, I call it interracial relationships, but a relationship between a white person and a non-white person, which I've been experiencing lately from someone in my family unit. So it's very interesting that this had just aligned at this time in my life, but man, there's a lot to be said. Can't wait to discuss it. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can make a comment as well. I think this, the whole entire book, this section in particular, if Black people, non-white people got their hands on it and just took the time to actually dive into it and give, it some consideration, I wouldn't doubt that the relationships that we have with each other would improve tremendously overnight. Just recently, an associate was speaking about her relationship with her partner, who is also non-white, and the struggles that she's having with it. But I think this is something that was mentioned early on in the book, and something that I also reminded her is that when you understand that racism, white supremacy is the number one factor trying to keep non-white people from having a constructive relationship, when you remember that, your relationships can greatly improve because you try to make your relationship as constructive as possible. That should be the goal, to have a constructive relationship. And so when he was talking about the parts about in the beginning parts, love and romance, and especially, but when he's speaking about romance, I found that to be very interesting, very intriguing, because a lot of problems arise, and the poor quality relationships we see, I think, are due to this concept of romance.
Agreed. I have I'm gonna read a little bit about that later, but I have definitely used so-called romance and the way it is mostly used for it in a correct manner. So yes, I want to read from 326 because I think this is really, really it's thought was understood more widely by non-white people, it would, mend a lot of our confusion and also allow us to maybe focus on other things because I suspect we focus too much on the abstract idea called love. I should have. Let me see which is the best part of this to read. I'm just going to read. Hopefully, this is. All right. So I'm just going to read a little bit from 326. And the code says, do not work at love or work at loving your chosen mate, male with female. Instead, try to think, speak, and act in a manner that best helps to replace the system of white supremacy racism with the system of justice, balance between people. Try to do this every day, at all times, in all places, in every area of activity. Explanation. According to compensatory logic, the best and correct way to produce love is not by trying to work at it, but trying to, as individual persons, to produce justice. This should be not thought of as work, but as natural use of time and energy. There's reason to believe that love, not romance, is best produced through the process of thinking, speaking, and acting to produce justice. Without justice, love cannot exist. In addition, it is incorrect to expect any person in a known universe to love you. It is incorrect to expect any person in a known universe to make you happy or to keep you happy. So I really appreciate the fact that the code says that thinking, speaking, and acting to produce a system of justice should be the natural way of existing. And I think compared to being constantly okay with the death, destruction, and misery that exists on planet Earth, which is how we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to be okay with the aforementioned death, chaos, and destruction and misery. So we should definitely reprogram ourselves, attempt to practice this piece of code because they say thoughts are very powerful. And simply just by thinking about producing justice versus thinking about silly and incorrect things, we could probably go quite a ways in producing a system of justice or getting people aware that a system of justice should and can be produced. So the natural state of things should be attempting to produce justice with our time and energy. Much, much different than how the majority of non-white people spend their time, for sure.
Yeah, I used to think that, focusing just on producing, being constructive, producing justice, and your relationships, and specifically, like where would the love go, or how can you show that you care about this person? But when you're working towards balance between all people, I think it's inevitable that you what's the word I'm looking for? You will love that person. You will show that you care. And the word that he used is affection. So you will show that you are being affectionate towards that person because you're trying to produce justice, which is balance between all people. So and it just got me thinking. The whole entire book is about that concept. So when you're on your purpose of producing justice, there's no way that you will mistreat this person that you care for and you want to be affectionate towards.
Yeah, I think that's what you said reminds me of like the part that is mentioned at the very top of the page where the code says people have said or done many things in the name of what they said was love. People have killed people whom they have said they love. People have kept people from speaking or acting constructively in the name of love. Males have unjustly subjugated females in the name of love. People have committed crimes in the name of love. Sexual intercourse has often been referred to as making love. People have lied in the name of love. So love gets thrown into a lot of chaos and nonsense, as the code mentions. And we definitely see attempted parents saying they love their offspring, and then moments later, like beating them like slaves or cursing at them like slaves. So love does not exist in 2021 on planet Earth. We have just been so confused and brain trash that we think a lot of extreme acts of insanity or a deep affection to people is love. But we have to understand that love can only exist in the form of peace or justice, and that can only exist when there's no mistreatment on planet Earth, and people who need the most help receive the most constructive help. Pretty simple goal we shall be working for. We do not need to be on this planet with all this so-called fake love, which is what it is, because it's definitely not real. Cannot be real. So anyone have? Go ahead, Miss Nania.
Also on that section, when I read it, the main message that I got out to from that section is like the reason why love doesn't exist and how there isn't a like definition for love. Because if you ask someone like, oh, what's a chair? They can explain a chair very easily. And they're pretty much all going to be very similar. But if you ask someone, what is love? Like, what does love mean? Like, what is that? It's a different answer from almost every person. There's like similarities, but it's very different. So I think it's like also not being able to define what that is, and people just making up their own definitions for what that means, which is which pretty much makes it invalid in every situation, because then if love is killing, then it wouldn't make any sense in a different situation. So it's very interesting. But also like growing up, and on many, like just in general, you always hear like, if you're getting clothes, if you're getting food, basically if you get the basic necessities, that is what love means. So, and also like when you go in nowadays, when you see like marches in the streets and you see this thing called allyship, and they say, oh, we just need to love each other. But then they're so killing. So it's just very interesting that this word is just thrown around like this. And it has to do with like, not having a definition, but love doesn't just really exist as well.
Yeah, it's such a neutralizing word, because people can be talking about like great issues like racism, white supremacy, and then someone would say, we just need to love each other, like you just mentioned. And that is supposed to solve our problems, so-called loving each other. But in a system of white supremacy, love has been confused, and white people have used it so flawlessly to keep us in the position that we are in, being dominated by white supremacy. So it's very best to understand this word and to use it with caution, if at all, and definitely understand that there's no such thing as so-called love. Even if people spend a lot of time and energy thinking about it, singing about it, and writing about it, it simply does not exist. Is there any more comments I'd like to be shared about on this aspect?
A lot of male, non-white males that love to say when they lie to somebody or lie to their mate or whoever they're with, that, oh, I lied because I love you, or just the gist of this whole circle, or I got in trouble, or I got locked up due to, I loved you, I didn't want you to get caught. It's always in a state of deceiving or putting their self in one harm for that quote unquote love.
Well said. Kwaku, I saw you were going to make a comment earlier. Do you still want to share?
Yeah, It's on 326 where he says, "Do not work at love or work at loving your chosen mate, male with female. Instead, try to think, speak, and act in a manner that best helps to replace the system of white supremacy racism with the system of justice, balance between people. Try to do this every day at all times, in all places, and in every area of activity." So that first part where he says, "Do not work at love or working at loving your chosen mate," it makes me think about how not only on TV, but in general, I guess, I don't want to say Black love, but, Black relationships, Black female, male female relationships oftentimes are always associated with struggling, and that in order for this relationship to work, you have to struggle, you have to go through it, you have to suffer in order to have a constructive relationship with your chosen mate. And it made me think, so when he says "do not work at it" or "do not work at love," it seems like I don't want to say it shouldn't be something that is difficult to do, I guess. I kind of get what, I guess I want to get people's thoughts on that, but I don't think, well, I think at least the way I interpret it is it shouldn't be something that's difficult or hard, right? That it should be something that's trying to be codified here, so I'm trying to pick my words correctly. I hope somebody's understanding me out there, if anybody. But essentially, maybe not focus it, not putting all your time and energy into making a relationship work when clearly it is not working. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're making a lot of sense. Ms. Williams, would you like to take a crack at the question?
Not so much his question. I just want to make a comment on 327 about do not confuse the word love with the word romance. And in the word guide, it says romance on page 345 in the word guide, it says romance, use this word with caution. Do not use it to mean the same word as love or affection. Use the word romance or romantic to apply to thought, speech, or action that is, in effect, thrilling, exciting, soothing, or productive, or temporary, artificial, general pleasure to mind or the senses. When others use this word romance or romantic, ask for detailed explanation that can be easily understood and ask questions. Question: is romance the same as love? They're not. Is romance the same as affection? No. Does romance include justice, balance between people? No. Does romance necessarily include honesty and sincerity? Most times not. Instead of using the word romance, it is better to use the word affection or now attraction. I don't want affection. Okay. Attraction. That attracts one person to another. That attracts one person to another romantically. What attracts one person to another person romantically? Question. During the existence of white supremacy, racism, does romance among non-white people have the same meaning as romance among white people? If so, why, how, and if not, why not? I think it doesn't mean the same among white people versus non-white people. It is silly or pitiful for a non-white person to attempt to be romantic while subject to the system of racism. I mean, the system of white supremacy racism. Is romantic activity among non-white people no more than pitiful, theoretical imitation of constructive attraction? Yes, it's pitiful. In the attempt of the practice of romance, nothing more than attractive exercise in the direct or indirect purpose of concept and the practice of white supremacy. These were all questions that are posed under this section of romance from the Word Guide. But for me, I remember growing up and doing dating and all that, and even through marriages, that the word love and romance were always interchanged. And truly, as I look at the code and see the definitions and how it's interacted, that love means justice, and we don't have justice yet. Justice means balance between people and guaranteeing that no one is being mistreated and that every person uh, has the opportunity to be helped the most constructive way. We don't have that yet. So when we use those words, we're assuming that we have it, but we really don't. And using the codified book, it helps us to realize what we really don't have and how we've been living an imitation life and using these words if though they really apply to us when they really don't. So I found that reading the chapter has really helped me to really understand what has really happened to us as non-white people in our so-called relations with other, trying to imitate white people, which we can never do. And even at our attempt, it's going to be pitiful. I'm mute.
Really, really well said, Ms. Williams, and I definitely agree. I used to be very, very good at so-called romance, which again is in practice is fakery. It is speech and or action designed to confuse or entertain people through pretending. So yeah, I was very good at pretending, telling people what they want to hear, and I believe I became so good at it because of my training under white supremacy, and particularly me consuming a lot of content in area 3 entertainment. So, and just to attempt to answer Mr. Kweku's question from earlier, I think like people can't work at love. You know, they can work at like their arrangement, their so-called relationship. They can work on like their attraction to one another, and I'm sure it can be constructive to attempt to have a constructive arrangement with the person you are attracted to, but it's best not to confuse that bond, that arrangement, with any sort of like bond that is related to love or whatnot. I don't know if it can be a loving bond. It can be a attempted loving bond, depending on how they're going about it. But I think that's what the code is getting at, and I hope that kind of answers your question from earlier. Ms. Nanaya, and then Ms. B.
Yeah, I wanted to also just make a comment and also try to attempt to answer Kweku's question as well. When you mentioned that question, one of the things I thought of too as I was reading this section is the title of the book, how it's like United Independent. And throughout the section of love, it talks a lot about each individual should be focused on producing justice. And then you get to choose like whoever you would like to, like your partner to be, or whoever your cellmate is going to be. You get to choose that. So it's almost like you have to add on what 05 said, you kind of have to go over that arrangement though that you guys have with one another in order to make it work, so-called work, if you want it to work. Question like that, I don't know if that's what it's saying, but also sometimes if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work, because your goal on earth is to produce justice. So I think it's very important to not get those confused, because oftentimes people are focused on the relationship and then they are on producing justice. But also, like, a person, what you see in front of you is what you're gonna get. Like, if that's not what you want, or if that's not the arrangement you want to be in with that person, you can choose someone else. So you're not like bounded by this, oh, I love you type of thing. It's almost like you need to think logically. about what your arrangements are with this person and if this is the arrangement that you want. Also, well, I'll wait for the next comment because that was a little bit later. It talks about like this whole like arrangement within like being married, but I'll wait to say that a little bit later.
Thank you, Miss Nadia. I want to share a really interesting example on an experience I had with the so-called love. It happened when I was in community college many years ago, but I had developed an arrangement with this person who was classified as brown, I believe Mexican is what white people call them. So and the first day I was with this non-white woman, well, non-white female, I'm sorry. She told me that that she loved me. Like literally the first day of us like so-called hanging out. And just looking back at that, it's just a prime example of how like just confused we are, and just how our emotions are just so out of whack that we would think to be in this thing called love within moments of meeting a person. But I suspect that to be a training presented for us, training given to us by racist men and racist women. They want us to think that we're living in some sort of fantasy where we could just go find love and find happiness by working hard and doing the things that the movies tells us to do, which is very incorrect and very illogical to think such a way. Mr. Dan, would you like to share a word?
One thing I would say about love or romance, since coming into contact with the code, that's a word I don't really like using. Like, you know, when people say they love you, like your attempted parents and whatnot. Like when they say it, you know, I try and say it like really fast, or I kind of almost grunt the word, so to keep peace between them. But I mean, as far as love, attempted parents, just sit and watch their offspring struggle and whatnot, and then they want to say that they love them. I don't know if anyone else has that struggle with that word since reading over it in the code.
Agreed. I had to tolerate that word usage a lot today from my victim unit. And I'm not. I know it's incorrect, but I just lie. I just lie to them because I don't have the time and energy to say that love does not exist. Nor do I have the time and energy to hear them complaining that I'm not lying to them by saying I love them as well. But my definition of love is just having a some sort of affection or affirmation given to the person. So it's really not really that much of a lie, but it's not it's not a codified definition of love at all. Miss B, let's share a word.
Hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I struggle with this word with love. Is I'm extremely uncomfortable with saying it, and I always ask myself, what is the definition? What does it mean?
Oh, well, I just subscribe to the codified definition. It was definitely mentioned in the pages, synonymous with the definition of justice. So currently, since there's no justice on planet Earth, there can also be no love on planet Earth.
I am honestly still pretty bad at using that word. I use it still. But I will say I'm definitely much more selective about when I use that word. And apart from family, I'm selective about who I say that to. I'll never forget though when somebody asked me why I love that person, and I couldn't actually say why. I think it's just a part of my programming, to that when I care for somebody, to say that I love them. So something to work towards. That's something else can't remember. But yeah, I still use that word. Oh, so that's probably what what Miss B was kind of getting at, but it, like still very confusing. Yeah, you know, when they asked me why I love that person, you know, I was stumped. I was stumped. You know, couldn't say why I loved them, but I've been saying it. Um, yeah.
Miss Williams.
As I think back and I try to remember, how old was I when I first heard the word love? And it's hard to pull back, but the exact time, right? Because I did not hear that word very often. And that's why it's difficult to try to remember it. But anyway, from society's teaching about love, I think the first time many of us might have been introduced to that word love, other than just maybe hearing it from our parents, is that through our involvement with Christianity. At least for me, that's where I heard it the most. And I'm not practicing Christianity at this time. And the bits and pieces that I might use is very rare, but I shall attempt to just use this a little bit. That when it talked about love, if I'm mistaken, I think it was 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And it talked about love being kind, patient, gentle, but it had all these good attributes, right? And that's what we were supposed to be striving for as Christians, to be like that, to be more loving, to be more kind and gentle to each other. But then as I look back at it, those were just words. Most people weren't really doing that at all, even with their daily lives, how they were living with people and treating people. It was a lot of mistreatment in spite of that. But then they would say, I'm sorry. Like that excused mistreatment of any sort. But it just made me think that we can't, that definition won't work for us. That definition that the world gave us for love, it will not work. It just won't work, because we've heard it all of our lives, and yet we still have not seen justice, a balance between people. We just have not seen that. So I'm having to break the habit of using the word, because I used to use it too quite frequently, and really I just use it injustly the way I used it, period, because I wasn't using it properly. But I think justice better classifies that word love. And I think justice, from what the code is teaching it gives you a better understanding of what it is. So even though I may attempt to use that word, sometimes I have to catch myself and find another word to use in spite of, because it's just not working. But I wanted to point out on page 327, second paragraph, it says, through the system of white supremacy, non-white people are led to believe that the promotion of romantic speech and action, romance, leads non-white people into confusion through play acting. And the result is a conflict between non-white males and females, and a confusion between sexual matters. In general, romantic speech and action can be concealed harmful intent. And it made me think about, in the next paragraph, which says, there is a reason to believe that the acts of affection and compassion are based on the intention of producing justice, balance between people. That is the way of producing the production of love. So when we look at the word affection from the word guide on page 4, it says affection kin, affection sex kin, soulmate, right? And it used the term, it says to apply to non-white males and females, and those one we're concerned about, who are not close blood kin to each other, but who choose to confide in each other and generally interact with each other with a great and sincere affection and caring, exactly like sister with brother, blood kin at the very best, except they may also engage in affectional sex, intercourse, or sexual play with each other, and also not disapprove of each other's acts of sexual intercourse, sexual play with others, non-white persons, when such acts are affectionate, caring, directly or indirectly, supportive of thought, speech, action designed to help replace the system of white supremacy racism with a system of justice. And then it says, note, no non-white person can function as an affectionate kin or affectional sex kin, uh, tell each other anything about each other without gossiping about others, and in the process of doing so, to seek the ultimate soulmate as characterized by affection, caring, truthfulness, honesty, knowledge, understanding, and trust. When persons choose to be affectionate kin or affectionate sex kin, it is correct for them to identify themselves as affectionate kin or affectionate sex kin, and to identify themselves as persons who are seeking to become ultimate sex mates to each other. So it leads us back to the point, like I think that was Carice was saying, what are we exactly looking for in our relationships? And if you're mating with anyone who does not have the main focus of replacing the system of racism, white supremacy with a system of justice that's a balance between people, then we are going to do the same thing we were doing before. We're going to end up mating the wrong way. So that has to be their focus. And it appears to me that as I look at more about the area of sex, is that so much is covered in it, but it's because the importance of it and how we have to make sure we are mating with the right people to the best of our abilities, because otherwise we're going to constantly keep going into chaos, conflict with each other, which we already see going on in many relationships of today. So I think the code has did an excellent job of helping us to define what we're actually looking for and what should be our main focus. And when you know that, then you realize these terms and these words that we use have to be questioned, because they mean different things to different people. And until you have that, your code list of your requirements and what you're looking for, you're gonna spin your wheels. So you have to start making your own code and the classification of what you're actually looking for in a mate. And then by doing so, you're gonna be finding the best way of promoting and the production of love through how we produce it through justice. I mute.
Thank you so much for that, Miss Williams. If only the collective of non-white people took this area with more seriousness, we could avoid so many problems amongst ourselves and do so much, spend so much more time on more constructive things than problem solving in this area. I really appreciated this part of the code from 328 because it reminded me on all the time and energy I wasted on what the code calls romantic rituals. They're called dates. They're called like outings. They call a lot of things, but I've just understood them as just being forced to spend money and eat a variety of different poisons called dinner food, dating food, like. So the code says 328, do not use romantic rituals in or other forms of show-offisms as a way of interacting with your chosen sexual mate. Instead, seek to interact by helping each other do constructive work and include in that work speech an action that is intended to best help replace the system of white supremacy, racism with the system of justice, balance between people. Explanation. During the existence of white supremacy and according to compensatory counteringrws logic, the concept and practice of romance is a contradiction to and a silly but entertaining obstruction of the honesty necessary for the production of a quality relationship. See quality relationship in Area 6 politics. So I really appreciate this part. Reminds me to never um, use any of my time and energy to pretend that dates or outings of that sort are constructive and actually support racism and white supremacy, depending on how you look at it. Um, so no more romantic rituals. I'll save us a lot of time and money. And yeah, it seems to be that it's more of the females who are programmed and trained to want these things because um, this was something that was often a root of conflict in my arrangements, not wanting to go out more, so-called go out more, or go on so-called dates more, to spend money on nonsense as far as I saw it. So I'm very happy to see it in the code, and it makes a lot of sense that it's here.
I also found that part to be constructive. Did you read the notes for that part? If not, I wanted to read it. So
Like Kwaku, I think your mic is a bit going in and out. I'm not able to hear you. I don't know if I'm the only one having a difficulty hearing you.
three. Can you hear me now? 329. 329.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't want to read it if you read it. Is that what you just read right now on 329?
I haven't read from 329.
Okay, so I wanted to share this part on 329 where it says, if you are a female, do not agree to participate in a romantic date unless you intend to and unless you are willing to engage in trivial
Right.
and or
The mic is getting low. So when you started to read, it was unintelligible.
Okay. Give me a second.
All right. Ms. B, would you like to share a word while we're sorting out his?
Yes, real quick. Going to the part that you read, do not use romantic rituals. Something is interesting because the reason why this book resonates with me so much because I stopped dating. I stopped doing the whole, go to a movie, going to eat and all that. I stopped that way before even reading the book. So that this book, like it hit me with that. If I do go on so-called date, it's not really a date. It would be like going to the museum to learn something. And the museums are free over here. Well, small donations sometimes or whatever. Walk in the park, get some air, exercise, stuff like that. Those are the things that I would try to do outside of, just trying to do stuff that's different, that's outside the norm, which is go to the movies, go out to eat, get fat, eating food that you don't know how it's being handled, and etc. So yeah, that part just really, really stuck with me.
Very well said and very, very true.
Yeah, I wanted to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh yeah, I just kind of wanted to comment on what Ms. Helen B said. I was just gonna ask, what are some ways that non-white people should engage with each other to get, I guess, date. I don't know the codified word for it, but a way to get to know each other. And I've also found that it's more constructive to do things like some of the things that Ms. B mentioned. I also like to suggest like going on a hike together. I find that to be constructive, and going to the museum and learning rather than just spending money I don't know, walking around the mall, going to watch a movie, just going to eat. But on 329, I was going to read this part from the code. It says, if you are a female, do not agree to participate in a romantic date unless you intend to and unless you are willing to engage in trivial and or silly conversation that may or may not include eating, drinking, dancing, kissing, cuddling, nakedness, etc. Engage in sexual intercourse for the purpose of comfort, fun, and or thrills only, and with little or no concern for a future serious, concern for a future serious and constructive relationship. Instead of participating in any romantic dating, seek to participate in direct compensatory counter-racist communications for the purpose of asking and answering many questions about each other, with the intention of learning, knowing, and understanding enough about one another to want to interact with each other in any manner that is likely to best help promote thought, speech, and action designed to replace the system of white supremacy racism with the system of justice, balance between all people in all areas of activity. According to counter-racist logic, any romantic dates that do not help to promote thought, speech, and or action to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice are in effect supportive of the system of white supremacy. Notes: romantic dating should be regarded as a meeting of a non-white male and a non-white female, with both persons having an understanding that romance is not the same as love or serious affection. Romantic dating should be understood as frivolous contact between a male and a female, and should be understood as having the basic purpose of engaging in various forms of sexual play with the intent or willingness to also engage in sexual intercourse. True affection and serious caring between non-white males and non-white females can probably best be produced while they are involved in trying to speak and act to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. So I thought that the first two bullet points were very, real, and should be taken into serious consideration, especially the second one, engage in sexual intercourse for the purpose of comfort, fun, and or thrills, only and with our little no concern for a future serious and constructive relationship. I think oftentimes when non-white females, and they can feel free to intervene too, to the non-white females in the room. Oftentimes when we go out on dates, they're under the guise that this is going somewhere, that this is going to be a romantic date. This person has interest in me, but oftentimes it's just romance, right? It's not real. This is kind of just to engage in sexual intercourse. And I think it goes back to establishing the honest relationships, the quality relationships that Neely Fuller speaks so much about in this book. And definitely during if this romantic relationship is supposed to be, or this date is supposed to be serious, I think that some of those questions that are mentioned early in the chapter need to be asked during this time. Yeah, so that's all I have for now.
Thanks for reading that portion and getting that codified validation that dating does support racism and white supremacy, especially in a manner that was mentioned from the part that you read. Can we have Dan, then Nanaya, then Helen?
Oh, okay. One thing I would say in regards to dating, Miss Helen had constructive suggestions. Being a young black male in the system, if you don't have like a female on your shoulder or whatnot, you usually get asked by your attempted parents or older black folks, hey, when you going to get a girlfriend or something like that. And it's not the most constructive thing to just get with a female just to say that you got one on your shoulder. And if they don't see you, interacting with them and stuff like that, you might get accused of anti-sexuality. But when you come into contact with the code, you kind of like lose interest in a lot of that stuff, especially like with non-white females like close to my age, like they're so brain trash and confused. I lose interest in talking to them pretty quickly. And also the points that Kwaku read on 329, especially engaging in that trivial and silly conversation. One thing that I kind of use is like a litmus test to kind of like gauge confusion. Use area 3, entertainment, just asking that non-white person what their favorite movies and TV shows are. You can kind of get a gauge on how confused they are. Like for example, one movie that I will instantly pretty much cancel a non-white female for is The Hate U Give. But yeah, it's not constructive to get with a female just to say that you got one. And same vice versa for, you know, like a non-white female, if the parents or attempted parents asking, hey, when are you going to get a boyfriend? Like, it's not constructive at all.
Well said.
Same thing when they say, when are you going to get married?
And then just to add, one of the things I was thinking about when we're bringing up the whole like dating thing, is definitely like subjective, like per arrangement. But I think like what I've been doing lately, instead of like going on a quote like date, I just continue to do the things that I like doing that's constructive. And it just so happens that my partner likes to do that as well. So it just makes it easier that we can just do it together, I guess, if you want to say together. But for example, like working out, I can work out by myself, but the other person likes working out as well. And then also like hiking. I am a very creative too, so I like to do like creative projects. And oftentimes I use that as a way for strategy. So just thinking of things that I like to do that are very constructive. And then also, if your partner likes that too, then it makes it a lot easier. But if not, then it's okay. And you just do the stuff that you want to do, and then they do something separate. But I also oftentimes too is just like getting ideas. So sometimes we have like projects that we work on. And then we like to get ideas like, oh, especially for my research that I did, that I'm still working on. Like, it was just nice to have another eyes on it that is in the similar mindset. So that was another way that we got to spend, I guess, time together, quote unquote. And if you want to call it a date, you can. But it's just one of those things that I just find things that I like to do. And then it just happens that my partner likes to do. So it makes it easier.
Thanks for the input, everyone. Ms. B, would you like to chime in?
Going back to what I was saying earlier about the traditional, or what people normally do, go to movies, go out to eat. And in movies, you can't really get to know someone. You're sitting in the dark and you have to pay attention to the movie. You can't talk, so you can't ask the questions that's in the book. You're not supposed to ask any questions really at that time. And then, so that's why I found that like a waste of time. Like, what are we really doing? Just watching the movie, then afterwards we talk about the movie, and then that's it. Another thing that made me change up my code before the book of going out on those so-called traditional dates, movies, and dinner, because the guy, the male, the Black male, usually, depending on how much they spend on a date, they want something in return. And that started to become a problem because that's not what I wanted. So that's why I decided to change things up and try free things and learning experiences and stuff like that. So that kind of changes the atmosphere.
Very logical, very well said. So I think it's time to talk about white genetic preservation / survival. I really, all of this is really significantly important, but I am just gonna read these 3 paragraphs because we could probably a lot to talk about just by reading this this portion. And definitely for those who have read the ISIS papers, I'm sure this her text in that book was definitely running through your mind as you read this part of the code. But on 330, the code says, question: what do many white men and white women regard as the greatest threat to the system of white supremacy racism? Answer. Within the system of white supremacy, many white people regard the reproductive sex organs of the non-white males in uncontrolled sexual intercourse with white women as the greatest threat to white people and or the system of white supremacy. The reproduction of white people through white people having sexual intercourse with non-white people is extremely unreliable. This is the basic reason why many white men and many white women regard the sexual organs of non-white males as fascinating, but also something to be feared, hated, controlled, and at times mutilated or destroyed. Those white people, both male and female, who believe in white supremacy regard the sexual organs of Black males to be major weapons. They usually react to the very existence of these Black sexual weapons with a strong, subtle, complex mixture of fearful fascination and contemptuous attraction. When they believe they do not have so-called proper control of these Black sexual weapons, they become increasingly malicious and are directly violent. It is therefore extremely important that every non-white person at all times be keenly aware and wary of all motivations and inclinations of white people in all matters involving so-called sexual circumstances. Very, very important aspect of the system of racism and white supremacy. I thought I'd ask that because we know what they're afraid of. So the question to everyone is how can we diminish this fear and hatred that white people have towards genetic material within Black people? Do you think that telling white people, okay, we'll help you all preserve your race in a constructive manner where y'all don't have to practice racism anymore? Do you think that will get white people to stop hating our genetic material and wanting to practice racism? Ms. Williams, you'd like to answer?
I'm not sure if that's going to get them to stop it, but as I read it, I thought that was excellent. I just thought that was just perfect because when a person has fears, the best way to overcome their fear is to give them alternatives or options to why they don't have to be fearful. And the code just lays it out just perfectly. And I think that if white people really want to end the system of racism, white supremacy, and produce a system of justice, then follow these guidelines and it can be done real quick. I'm not going to say tomorrow, but it can be done real quick simply because what they fear is not our fear. Our fear is for survival too, but we want to live here in peace. They want to continue to dominate us as non-white people. We don't want that anymore. We're not going to tolerate that. So when I see the code lay different thing, when it says answer, consider would you given up, consider could be given up to keep white supremacy, but not by maintaining the system of white supremacy and not by mistreating non-white people, but by guaranteeing that no person is being mistreated and by guaranteeing that that person who needs help the most gets the help. In addition, all white people and non-white people of the known universe must first voluntarily agree. We have to agree on this, that we're not gonna engage in sexual intercourse or sexual play with each other until the system of racism and white supremacy is replaced with a system of justice. We've looked at countless times when we're looking at sex, is that white people in their sexual behavior toward non-white people is horrible. I mean, you just can't even find words because how do you consider yourself a person of any type of moral character, which is not, we know you don't have it. But if you wanted to consider yourself a person of moral character, why force or manipulate sexual behavior on people who you've already classified as children, boys and girls, males and females? We cannot be males and we cannot be men and women in this system because the system won't allow it. So why would you want to have sexual intercourse with a non-white person knowing the mistreatment that you're gonna do to them? And it's just a matter of time. If you don't do it from the beginning, you will do it later. But just to even think about having sexual relationships with a child, we are the children, the adopted children rather, of the racist white supremacy. I mean, I already know that sometimes it is their practice to have sexual intercourse with even their young children, right? But they're yours. They belong to you. I guess we do too in a way, but we should have a choice in deciding what we want to do with our own bodies. We should have that choice. And we don't have or white people shouldn't have the choice to be able to dominate us and tell us what we need to do with our bodies and how they're going to mistreat us in our bodies. I think only non-white people, non-white males and females should have the choice in deciding what they want to do with their bodies. I think they should have that choice. And white people need to get out of the middle of that, trying to force us into having relationships with them because we don't want it. I mean, for those who do, hey, that's their business. But the majority of us are waking up and we really realize it's detrimental to us as a group of people. It's detrimental. It's not helping us in any way. It's sexual confusion, the homosex, the anal sex, any kind of sex that's already deprived and depraved mindset is not what we want to practice. And if they want to do it, do it. But if you want justice, if you really want peace, and you really want for us to get along, let us allow you to continually to have your sexual intercourses with only white people. You're safe that way. You don't want to produce with us no way. You just want sex with, but you really don't want to produce with us. So based on that, we don't want to produce with you either. And we'll allow you to have your survival, but let us have our survival at the same thing and allow us to not to be continue to be mistreated by your sexual depravity of what you call sex. We just don't want that anymore because it's not going to make any sense and it's not helping us. So I think it's an excellent situation. You want your survival, we want ours as well, and you want to preserve that your white people continue to live on the planet, then stay with your white people, have sexual intercourse with your white people, leave non-white males and females alone, stop killing them, stop abusing them, and we'll get along just fine. I mean,
Blackcellent, Blacktacular. Thank you for that, Ms. Williams, Mr. Kweku, and then Nanaya.
Okay, I'll go ahead. My thoughts, I'm trying to remember what the question, oh yes, I got it. Okay. My thoughts on the question is no. I don't believe that, like, I don't believe, like, when I think of white people, I think that there's something like genetic annihilation is like subconscious or unconscious, but I think the ultimate is like power and control. So with power and control in a way, I don't know. Like, I just feel like we'd have to do a whole lot, a whole lot. And I don't know, not sure if that's a good use of our time in order to say, hey, white people, don't be afraid. Like, we'll save you too. So that's just my thoughts.
Interesting. I definitely understand the logic and that, all right, they have created a system to protect their numbers and to have an existence in the future as white people. But I don't think due to it being possibly a subconscious and or a conscious thought, fear in their mind, it may be very extremely difficult to get them to admit such a thing, and also to agree with no more sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people while there is white supremacy on the planet. I think that may get them more serious about producing justice. But if they find out that, if they want to keep their numbers, then we're not supposed to have sex with them, even after racism has been eliminated, then I think they have spent their entire existence being able to rape, kidnap, and basically mistreat and use non-white people for whatever they want. So it may be very difficult for them to get it out of their head that they do not own our bodies and access to our bodies. Like they definitely, in a system of racism, white supremacy, they do. But it's been made quite a bit harder for them to get access to our bodies, even though some of them do take the old route of just kidnapping a non-white person and brutalizing them sexually. So I think it's a very good idea in a system of justice if we are able to force white people to produce this system. We would need people whose job it is to make sure white people aren't going extinct due to their genetic deficiencies or whatever it's called, their low numbers. But very interesting concept. I really think it's something to think about. Let's have Kwaku and then B.
So in regards to the question, I think the first thing that needs to happen is that white people need to start being honest and practicing, self-respect, never lying to themselves. Maybe open and upfront that they do not want to be genetically annihilated, rather than continue to confuse and use deceit. I believe once that happens, I believe, I'd like to believe that Black people, non-white people will get on board with preserving their race. And I think if we're given the ultimatum of stop having sex with white people and the system of racism will end, I think a lot of Black people will take that deal. But until Black people are not confused or they're not being deceived as to why racism is being practiced, then I think we won't really make any ground on this topic, because Black people continue to have sex with white people until otherwise.
Well said. I like to discuss the extreme danger of sex with white people. I am a survivor of such interactions, and it's my duty to spread the alarm that it's a very dangerous thing to do. You risk your mind, your freedom, so-called freedom, and you risk early death by having sex with white people. Although I've survived it, it was still very, very incorrect behavior to be involved in. And I really like this part from 331, which the code states, sex between white people and non-white people. And it says, during the existence of white supremacy racism, racist men and racist women and white supremacists collectively have shown that they are willing to promote conflict and confusion between non-white males and females. Racist men and racist women do this in order to weaken and confuse non-white people in all of their interactions with each other. They do this to keep non-white people fighting against each other instead of helping them to produce ways and means of replacing white supremacy racism with justice, balance between people. During the existence of white during the existence of the system of white supremacy, there is no activity that is more destructive, incorrect, confusing, hypocritical, obscene, lewd, indecent, vulgar, criminal, degrading, disgraceful, deceptive, insulting, insane, racy, racist, and more destructive to the production of justice than acts of sexual intercourse or sexual play between white people and non-white people. This also applies to the promotion of so-called homosex. So fortunately, my mind has been spared despite despite my interactions with white people. But for a large majority of non-white people, sex with them, sex between white people and non-white people totally confuses a victim of racism and makes them unable to participate in counter war business meetings or even to even think about producing a system of justice because this is something about going home to a white person in their bed that totally retards a non-white person further to them being either becoming too comfortable because white people often can provide non-white people with a lot of comfort and many trinkets, or it just introduces into them, I don't know if it's fear that they can't talk about the problem, but all in all, it definitely neutralizes that non-white person in regards of being able to constructively think about the race problem and to constructively attempt to solve the race problem, which is how I see sex between white people and non-white people being so deadly and dangerous because it just neutralizes so many non-white people, and we can't have neutralized units on the battlefield. Everyone must be working, everyone. So, Miss B. Miss Helen, would you like to share a word?
Hello. Hi. I was talking and the mic was off. Yeah, Silent Warrior introduced me to a movie called White Girl. It came out 2016. It's by a lady named Elizabeth Wood, and the story is loosely about her life. I strongly advise everybody to watch this movie, and everything that you're saying, 05, is in this movie. Everything.
Thank you for the introduction of that film. We'll check it out. Is there anyone that had notes to share about this area?
Something that I've been wondering about is apart from white people being honest about the genetic annihilation, what are some until white people are going to be honest about it, what are some things that we can do to get Black people, non-white people on board to stop having sex with white people? I like to think that if at all possible to begin making the population, the opposite sexes, less brain trash. I think that one thing I hear a lot is from Black males, non-white males, is that, oh, there aren't any good Black women available. So then they start dating white women. So that's kind of where I was going with that. I think if we can attempt to ease the confusion, that's one way. Thoughts or comments?
I think non-white people have to realize that there is a war waged against them to even know that it's wrong. On top of that, they have to gain some kind of self-respect where they're not lying to themselves about the things that's going on under this system, for them to realize that because we are in a war against white supremacy, that the engagement that we do is not going to benefit us to get justice of what we need.
Agreed. Very well said, Miss Johnson. Ms. B, would you like to share a word?
Yeah, I want to say that what I do, something that I do, that I try to do, I defend whenever I see like Black males trashing non-white females, I defend us and vice versa. And that's how I try to bring some attention, some balance to things. Um, yeah, I don't participate in the trashing, uh, and I point out our trauma, our mistreatment on both sides. You know, and yeah, that's something that I do.
Yeah, and regards to the question, I think if a victim of racism truly gets an understanding of the enemy and how they operate and what that enemy has made them and what that enemy thinks of them, then there should be a little motivation to make the decision to no longer have sex with white people. According to compensatory counteringrws logic, there's many reasons, but just according to my own logic, it shouldn't be hard to stop having sex with people who have, from my understanding, since they've encountered us, they have been mistreating us or attempting to mistreat us in ways that are just simply horrifying. And it sounds like a broken record, but just with the rape, the mutilation, the castrations, all of the vile things that they have done to us historically. So this should be the reason why we have no problem, because they haven't gotten any better, haven't changed. And but the code gives a great example and many more reasons why we should not want to be having sex with white people. And I'm just going to read these 3 paragraphs really quickly from 332. It says, to further give some constructive information to the question, constructive answer. It says, within the system of white supremacy, racist men and racist women are extremely fearful and hateful of any loss of control over the sexual behavior of non-white people, particularly in regards to sexual intercourse and sexual play between white people and non-white people. Racist men and racist women do, however, speak and act to force, lead, lure, entice, and or tease non-white people into sexual and or anti-sexual behavior that is confusing, chaotic, silly, and generally destructive to non-white people. A basic study of racist men and racist women shows that they enjoy killing, maiming, and sexual game playing, but that they also show great nervousness, embarrassment, fascination, fear, and or hatred when there's sexual interaction between white people and non-white people that is not planned and or controlled by them. A basic study of racist men and racist women reveals that they are extremely hypocritical, deceitful, contradictory, and dangerous to non-white people in everything that they say or do in regards to nudity, sexual intercourse, anti-sexual behavior, sexual play, and in regards to whatever they say is lewd, obscene, unacceptable, improper, indecent, and or generally incorrect. So if a victim understood these aspects of the people who maintain and refine the system of white supremacy, then perhaps that would be all the motivation that one needs. This is why it's really important for victims of racism to understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. So therefore, they're not totally confused when that white woman or a white man that they've been in the bed with mistreats them in any form, way, shape, or any way, shape, or form. Mr. Dan, would you like to share a word?
One thing I would say in regards to the sex between white people and non-white people, it's probably easier said than done. And then there's one aspect that, maybe some people might overlook. I don't know if everyone knows about this, but sometimes there be white men that be out here on the hunt for black males to, pretty much have sex with their white wife. And you got black males that'll volunteer to do this too, especially like in country clubs and stuff like that. I think I remember reading a news report or article on this. I think they were called like Mandingo clubs or something. And you got black males that'll volunteer to do this too. And I think cuckolding is a term for it. And they will the black males will do it with the white man in the room. And I don't know, like, but I would think that the black males would have more black self-respect, but yeah, white men they'll allow that to happen. And I'm not too sure like why they allow that in regards to white genetic survival, but that is something to like think about.
Well, it's also something, it says sexual intercourse that they are again controlling. They have total control over that encounter, despite them not being the ones who are initiating or who are engaging in the sexual act. But that is a way for their mind to pretend to be a black male with black genetic material, which is what the white male consciously or subconsciously thinks that the white female wants, which is some black genetic material inside of her, which is why that interaction occurs, I suspect. But yeah, it's really daunting to try to understand the mind of a suspected racist, because it's just so vast and so unpredictable of the things that they do, and the certain patterns we can detect that they do, despite us seeing the patterns of white people engaging in these various incorrect behaviors can be very hard to understand why that these behaviors occur amongst white people, white supremacists. Thanks for that comment, Mr. Dan. Is there anyone else who have any notes they'd like to share?
I would like to share a part in where it talks about marriage. And I know earlier it was mentioned that when you talk to like your attempted parents or just anyone in general, the first question they ask if they see you with someone, like, oh, when are you guys gonna get married? And then all of these things too. But also like living in this country here, it's almost like if you decide to have like kids with someone, they make it so difficult in order for you to like have a partnership with someone and you're not married. And the reason I say that is like if you think of like the schooling and medical records and just all of these random things, and then they always ask like, so like who's the dad or who's the husband or who's this and who's that. So I just, it's very interesting how in the book it talked about like seeing for non-white people, it's not the same as for white people. Because if you think about marriage too, it goes down to the whole, what is it? I want to say like the whole religious aspect of a marriage too in this country particularly, because they talk about like, oh, whatever religion they talk about. But what I'm getting at here is just like the interesting part about how this is more of just like the difference between like white people getting married and then non-white people getting married. and how it has no real significance other than being like a mutual agreement of to benefit the offspring.
Yeah, I really thought the marriage portion of this area of the code made a lot of sense. I really appreciate it. Reminded me of something pitiful and silly and stupid I witnessed. It was two Black females who I got married to each other, and there was another Black female who was the so-called best man, and they had posted on Facebook, and my friends got married, and I'm the best man, and it was I was just not surprised at all, because that's the kind of confusion that breeds in the area of the world known as SoCal, Berkeley, California. So it was, I mean, that's actually North California, but anywho. So I take that experience as just Black people can only pretend to be married. We can only pretend a lot of things. We can pretend to be men and women. Case in point, that recent marriage I just mentioned. But I think it's really important that we understand that marriage is only allowed to happen between white people, and we should not be trying to find a husband or a wife, because in a system of white supremacy that is not gonna produce justice. In more cases than not, it can't support white supremacy more than it supports even the offspring, because one does not need to be married to be constructively helpful to an offspring. So yeah, the code says if non-white people like are looking at marriage for happiness or for anything that white people have told them marriage is gonna be met with lots of disappointment. And according to what I see, 2021 and my entire life, very, very correct. I grew up without a Black male father, but that was expected. And my victim mother was once upon a time married to the Black male father that I allegedly have. But it didn't save the arrangement. It didn't prevent my victim mother from not being a single parent. So nothing can save us from the system of white supremacy. Nothing can protect us from it, besides possibly knowing what it is and how it works, and producing a system of justice where no one is subjected to such terror and horror. But I may be incorrect. Let's have Mr. Dan, then Miss B. Maybe that's an old hand. Miss B, would you like to share with?
Hello to everybody. 05, I really am sympathetic for your situation. And I just wanted to say that I watched an interesting interview with a lady by the name of Dorothy A. Brown. She wrote a book called Whiteness of Wealth. And in that book, she was talking about how married non-white Black couples, when they get married, that they pay more in taxes than white couples, and how she came about that and other things as well. I think it's a very informational book, and I think everybody should definitely check it out. If not, check out her book. Definitely check out her interviews and listen to how she breaks down everything. It's very constructive.
Thank you for all the bits of constructive information and things to further understanding of our topics. Thank you. So yeah, I also wanted to read this to just further our understanding of what's been done to us by racist men and racist women. And also there is a different kind of programming that it didn't compute with my brain computer or my mind, because I can't say that I've honestly have salivated over white women. I have never had like some thirst for white flesh or to want to be in bed with a white woman. I just thought I was attracted to all females equally or naturally. But that's not the case for some people. Some people really grow up salivating for a white man or a white woman. And I suspect that is due to the heavy programming and conditioning that comes from Area 3. And in generally all areas of the people activity, because we're always saying white people at the top, white women at the top, white men at the top. So we are attracted to that power. And also they have been made to be very attractive in Area 3 entertainment. So let me read this couple of passages from the code, because I think it definitely relates to that various programming that people receive that makes them really, really worship white people and want to have sex with white people. And we can find this phenomenon on Twitter, where we see black males and black females just begging for a white companion, a white captive, a white prison master so that they can bedworm basically. So anywho, the code says on 334, question: if you have sexual fantasies about some white people, is it correct for you to admit that you have them? Answer: yes, but as long as white supremacy exists, it is incorrect to allow those fantasies to resort in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with a white person. Explanation: during the existence of white supremacy, the white supremacists directly and indirectly, willfully and deliberately do many things to cause non-white males and females to be sexually attracted to white men and women. While doing this, the white supremacists also make sure that all sexual activity between white people and non-white people, and all sexual activity between non-white people and each other, is strictly controlled by the white supremacists. The white supremacists help to promote these sexual fantasies among non-white people in order to cause non-white people to behave in the manner of sexual simpletons, sexual monsters, and or sexual monstrosities that are in need of control by the white supremacist, racist men, and racist women collectively. So this is what has been done to, I think that also allows us to explain like the hyper over sexualization of black females and black males, and then also Area 3 and Area 6 as well, because black females and black males are also forced to function as either hypersexual or hyper effeminized or just hyper monstrosities in a way that we are been trained to think, speak, and behave. And it's all very tragic, but if you really pay attention, it really checks out the things that that the code book mentions. The racist man, racist woman have done. In my confusion, I would think stuff like this is impossible. I would think a group of people, like convincing another group of people to put on dresses or to consume drugs and call it having fun. I would think, this is crazy talk. This is like some kind of movie where the evil villain has all these plans against the protagonist. But it's real life. White people have not only have they had plans, but they have enacted the plans. Have created a really, really complex system with varying layers to what's happening on planet Earth, and this can't seem like a lot because there is a lot, but at the root of what they're doing is quite simple: mistreatment. Whether they want to call it brain control or police, so-called police brutality. It's mistreatment, and it should not be taking place anywhere on planet Earth ever. Miss Williams, would you share a word?
Yes, on page 332, there was a question posed that is it correct for white person and non-white persons to have sexual intercourse with each other if they, end quote, love each other? And then the answer is, according to the counter-racial logic, intercourse between white person and non-white person during the existence of racism and white supremacy does not help to express or produce love. Such acts are definite indications of a total lack of caring by the white person for the non-white person. Such acts during such conditions shows that the white person involved is functionally helping to influence the thinking of non-white persons so that the non-white person is more likely to become confused and more likely to be fooled by this more refined form of racism, white supremacy. Sexual intercourse influences the way people think about each other and about others and about the areas in general. Therefore, white people who engage in sexual intercourse or anti-sex intercourse with non-white people while white supremacy is still in existence is not only a promoter of confusion, but also guilty of committing the greatest possible insult against a non-white person and against non-white people in general. Such acts under such conditions are supreme expression of racist injustice. And it goes on to talk about the racist man and racist woman using non-white people as belly warmers, right? But I wanted to talk, mention the point because of the nature of the domination and the fact of the acts of sexual intercourse, sexual play and so-called homosex between white and non-white people has the direct and indirect effect to further debasing, confusing, weakening all non-white people. Therefore, it is incorrect for any victim of racism to engage in any act of sexual intercourse or sexual play with any person classified as white. In addition, any promotion of so-called generalization anti-sex among non-white people should be regarded as a major part of white supremacy racist strategy. So we can't forget it's a strategy to use non-white females and non-white males as sexual traps, right? Of confusing them to make them think that they are being accepted, that they are so-called being loved by this white person when truly it's none of that. It's none of that. It's all for their benefit. So I would think that non-white people really need to pay attention to that they're being used. They're already a victim, but when you allow somebody to victimize you over and over and over, you have to think about who's allowing this. If you're not being raped, then you shouldn't be volunteering to be constantly abused by white people. It just doesn't make sense because the person that's gonna lose is never gonna be the white person. It's always gonna be the non-white person, and most times it ends very tragic. So we have to be very careful. I mean.
Very well said, Ms. Williams. Always appreciate your insight from the text. And yeah, no one should want to be involved with white people after how after our centuries of incorrect interactions, forced interactions with white people, and let alone a bed warmer. We already are forced to be white people's whores, which is another concept we learned earlier in this section of the code. But yeah, we should just it involves a lot of pretending. The system of white supremacy forces us to always put on some sort of mask, some sort of pretend, some sort of act, and we should be I'm definitely tired of acting and pretending, and yeah, the lies are also an act of pretending and acting. So thousands of reasons to be serious about the problem, to want to produce a system of justice. Um, I hope folks who find this information will take it seriously and do what needs to be done so we can get to that effective number of non-white people who will be responsible for producing a system of justice, because death or a system of justice, no ifs, ands, or but, death or a system of justice is what I want. And I think planet Earth definitely deserves system of justice. White people have had their fun for far too long. They mistreated us and dominated us for far too long. And this does not need to be how planet Earth functions. It just takes an effective number of non-white people to really be serious about this problem. And we can definitely solve it overnight. I think we may be able to get into our closing comments. Would anyone like to start? Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
As I heard you speaking about that effective number, I have to throw a plug out for Dr. Sancu with his theory on the effective number, especially being in English-speaking countries, right? That the message will get out even faster because they already speak English, although we know that we have to work on the other places that non-white people are. But that's the key right there, that effective number, speaking, acting in a way that produces justice. And that's the way I think that it can be greatly done. And in a lot of our African countries, we do have a lot of people who are tend to praise the whiteness of white people and think that because they're in a relationship with a white person that they have won the lottery or won the pot of gold. But I just want to encourage them to know that that's not the pot of gold. Your pot of gold is your non-white female. That's your pot of gold. So not don't be searching out white women as your pot of gold or a white man as your pot of gold. Justice can't be produced with us steady holding on to their whiteness and what they've done to us as a people. So we have to do everything we can. And if sex is a way to deter them, then use whatever you have to deter them. And for me, I think sex is the best way to deter them because they're so sex crazed with all these different types of sex they want to be into that we know that, well, I know all of us have a problem with sex, but they have a greater problem with sex. So that's number one way that we can fight back by denying them access to non-white females. I'm mute.
Appreciate your closing comments, Ms. Williams. Definitely agreed. That is probably our best negotiating factor that we have, is telling white people, hey, no more sex with y'all until we sort out this race problem, this problem of racism, white supremacy. No more Black genetic material for you all until this problem is solved. No more late night hookups until this problem is solved. It would be do a lot to perhaps get a system of justice on planet Earth, or be a great indication of who are the white people who do not want to meet our demands, because those white people should be even greatly suspected of practicing racism, white supremacy. White people who are like, nah, we should be able to have sex with you guys and mistreat you. You know, we should be able to do that. Those are the white people we should have a closer eye on, so to speak. Ms. Beebe, would you like to share a closing comment? Thanks again, Ms. Williams.
I want to thank everybody, the panel, and on the Zoom, and to help things move along, I try to suggest a united independent compensatory code system concept as much as possible to non-white people. I also like to share articles of times when white people have harmed, maimed, mistreated us, killed, and stuff like that. Hopefully that will influence non-white people not to sleep with white people. I think that the no sleeping with white people, I think that's an excellent way to, get their attention and wake us up and, get their attention as well. And I also, off topic a little bit, I want to thank 05 for creating this platform, Zoom panel. And I want to say that I thank you so much. And for everybody that's participated in past and future, you've been very encouraging to me. You've helped me to open up and want to fight even harder to end this system of racism, white supremacy. And I'm greatly appreciate each and every one of you, past and future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your appreciations and everyone's amazing contributions to these discussions and these business meetings, as I like to look at them. Would anyone else like to share closing comments?
I have closing comment. This section of the area 6 was very eye-opening. I like the fact that it gives us a dynamic of how we should go about white people as far as taking over the control of our bodies. I know I forgot to say that it's a lot of young non-white females that do derogatory things with white males to get a public platform of degrading yourself, as far as like porn industry as well. So just to know the gist of how we can control ourselves as treating ourselves with self-respect, that it's important that we need to come together because we have a bigger issue than we have, that we're not longer playing their little games or being their pets or their little just to know the gist of to carry on a arrangement with the person, your care mate as well. So to hopefully that eventually down the line, if we take ourselves more serious, to have that self-respect, that we can eventually come down to having actually justice, because everybody wants this quote unquote love, but and is seeking it and is chasing it, but don't know what it actually is.
Really well said. Thank you, Ms. Curries.
And then I can go next. Thank you for the constructive discussion. I'm going to continue to study this section and continue to study the rest of this book, just to become more codified with my words and just really understanding and being thoughtful and logical about the words that I use, especially since there is a word guide and Neely Fuller provides definitions that are clear cut. Also, when talking about like relationships, I say relationships like in general, and specifically when interacting with white people, is being able to codify my speech and behavior and really just, when they ask me questions, be able to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nalaya. I see quickly you're going to share.
Yeah, for me, just more, lifting the veil, less confused. I can see how, words, terms such as love, romance have been greatly used in deceit and confusing non-white people to get in these unconstructive arrangements that we have. It shows a lot of the reason why we are unhappy with one another and how we continue to be unhappy with one another. Very, very quickly. Area 8 sex, very, very informative. Just gonna plug the website producejustice.com. Buy the book, get codified. Let's end this problem as soon as possible. Thank you everyone for being here and sharing constructive information. I found it to be of great constructive value. Until next time.
Well said. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Dan. And if you can afterwards, victim and why, would you like to share a closing comment as well?
Okay, for my closing comments in regards to area 8, sex, for the pages we covered, it definitely went over good stuff, and you could attempt to practice should you find a care mate, because I know when you get into this material, associates are already hard to come by, so let alone a care mate. But at least with what was presented in the pages we read, you have a blueprint that you could use in your attempted relationship, and also as a in regards to that whole belly warming thing with non-white females. Pieces of a Puzzle by Renethia Tate. That's a good book to read all about that. And that's all I have for my closing comments.
Agreed. I don't know if Victim NY is going to be able to share. Closing comment may still be on the plantation. For mine, I think it's really interesting that my life experiences have had so many just violently racist experiences, and in the system of white supremacy, there's really not really a place or forum where one is expected to discuss all the racist attacks they've survived and all the battles they've survived in the war. But understanding racism and white supremacy has allowed me to understand that just my life has just been a prime example of the war being waged against non-white people, whether it's race soldiers pointing guns at my face or kicking down my front door or handcuffing me and my victim mother, or whether it's the absence of Black male fathers in the homes of associates and victim units that I've known. The war has always been in my face, and it's very nice to have a place to study the problem and attempt to solve the problem, so we can prevent the future children on planet Earth of having to just live such a hell and live in hell, which is how I describe planet Earth, some sort of hell, with white people creating it as such. So thanks for the closing comments. I appreciate everyone's appreciation, and especially everyone's sharing and insight in this topic, area 8, sex. And I'm gonna end it there. Thank you.